Okay, so this is after making the video, and this is the introduction, the actual video of tightening the top nuts and my story of fixing the rattle on the front suspension is after this introduction. So as with a lot of things, this is more complicated than at first seems. With this car, Toyota's designed this top shock nut assembly area properly. You'll see that there's no I'll just focus that, there's no holding portion here, so you can't insert an Allen key and hold the actual strut or this area of the shock while you tighten up the nut. And this area here doesn't seem to move the middle of it, and the nut will. However, in some aftermarket assemblies, what you have to do is hold this portion, the top of the rod, hold that while you turn the nut. Okay. So that is to say that there's an insert here on this this middle portion on the inside of the top nut, on top of the threaded area. There's an insert that you'd put an Allen key in to stop the middle from turning while you turn the top nut to tighten it up. So that's passenger side, this is driver's side in Australia. So it's the opposite in USA and Canada. I find it hard to believe that you would use an impact wrench to tighten this up, because I would think that it would spin. That's not a really suitable type of design. What I'm going to recommend is some videos that you watch before you tighten the top nuts, so that you can then make your own informed decision. So yes, in life there's always more to things than at first appears, and the more you look into things, the more complicated they become, and I do have a responsibility of making my videos as accurate as possible. Okay, here's a video to watch before doing this this work. Okay, and he's got metal filings there. Another one is, well, there's one video there you could look up, and there's this one here.
So right here is a perfect demonstration of what I'm talking about. See, when you turn this knot, if you don't have that 9mm bolt on top of this to hold it steady, when you spin it like this, it turns the rod down in here. And what the shops were telling me that install suspensions, they said to overcome it is they just use an air wrench, which goes super fast, so this doesn't spin. Well, that was false. As soon as I did it, it just spun this super fast. And I mean, it lasted 3 years before it started to leak. But
and there's this video, so I'll just play that.
It's still loose. Hopefully, you'll be able to hear a change in pitch of the gun when it bottoms up.
So he's using an impact wrench, and although there's a holder on top of the thread there, so yes, it does get very complicated. So please do your own research is really what I'm saying. Okay, now I'll turn you over to the video I made. So the video after now is the video I made of just tightening up the top nuts and stopping the noise in my Toyota Camry year 2000 front suspension. Okay, this is a descriptive video about how I fixed the front end rattle on the suspension on a 2000 Toyota Camry. And it's a little unusual because it just simply involves tightening up this nut here on front of the suspension. I did all the other checks. I took the wheel off. I checked the tie rods, the stabilizer bar, ball joins, you know, I wrenched around under there on the steering components, and I got a few levers, and I couldn't find anything wrong whatsoever. And I thought, well, you know, what's left? And I thought about these nuts up the top here on top of the suspension. So I started to work on them, and I got some positive results. So this is the torque wrench I used. I'll get the settings in a sec, but what happened was I got what I considered to be a fair amount of torque on the bolt, and so I'd do that to both sides, and then after 2 days of driving, the rattle would come back, and that went on for a couple of months. And then one day I got sick and tired of it, and I turned this up to a harder setting, and I did this side, and it turned, and then it clicked. When I went around to that side where the noise was coming from, it started to slip, and I thought to myself, well, what's going on here? So I took the torque down, I came to this side, I tightened it up until I had the correct settings, thinking that I'd moved this. When I went around to that side, it kept on turning, and eventually it bottomed out and it clicked, and there hasn't been an issue, and I've gone to work for a week and it's been all good. So at this point it looks like I've fixed it, so I'll just go and demonstrate that now. I haven't done this for 1 week. So this is the side that was loose. So now we can see that they're both at the same torque settings. There's no looseness, and you know, both nuts have bottomed out. Now, I've never heard of anyone fixing up their front end suspension rattles by doing up these bolts, but when I inspected the wheels, I noticed that that's really all that was left in the suspension component. So there you go. There's a possible fix for you if you've got front end noise. It was making like a sort of a crunching noise when I went over a speed bump, and also when I turned hard to, say for instance, getting out of a car parking spot and going forward and turning the wheel. So there you go. So I'll get the torque settings now, and I'll read them out. Okay, so I'm going to tighten this up to 120 foot-pounds. I'm going to say foot-pounds because I was brought up with feet and miles as a child. That equates to, I think, 16.6 kgs. So just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to now torque that up to 120 foot-pounds. Okay, so just in closing the video, before I did the shock nut on top, I checked the tie rod. I removed the wheel, checked the tie rod, ball joints, control arm and sway bar, and found nothing. That was all good. This is a strut and coil suspension setup, and again we're looking at a 2000 Toyota Camry here. The nut itself is called the nut on the strut bearing, or the rod nut, or the shock nut. That's that one there. I believe this area around the shock nut there, this area here, is called the strut mount bearing plate. So if you've got one of these old cars, this is 21 years old now, I strongly recommend taking it to your mechanic, or if you've got the aptitude, do it yourself. Find out what the shock nut torque setting is, and just make sure that it's tight enough, because in my experience, if that's not tight enough, you're going to get like clunking noise and possibly movement in your front suspension.